Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in the dark, replaying that message over and over, each syllable carving deeper into my thoughts. Had a great time last night. The words were innocuous, almost friendly, but in context they were a dagger. Sophie had said she was working late. The message told a different story. When morning came, I couldn't pretend anymore. I needed clarity, even if it shattered me. I waited until Sophie stepped into the shower, steam curling under the bathroom door. Her phone sat unguarded on the dresser, screen dark, silent. My heart pounded, not from guilt, but dread. What if I was wrong? What if I was right? I picked up the phone, fingers trembling. The passcode was still the same, my birthday. She hadn't changed it. That, I thought, meant something. Maybe hope. Maybe carelessness. The truth hit me in waves. Dozens of messages. Michael. Not just a coworker, not just a boss, but a married man, with a family. The two of them had been meeting for months. Dinners, late-night calls, secret weekend. Work trips. Her words once meant for me. I can't wait to see you, last night was amazing. Were now his. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, my vision narrowed. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was confirmation. Cold, undeniable. I sat down, gripping the edge of the bed, phone in hand. Sophie emerged moments later, hair damp, towel wrapped around her. She froze when she saw me, eyes flicking to her phone, then to my face. She didn't ask what I was doing. She already knew. You read them, she said softly. I nodded, unable to speak. She wrapped the towel tighter around herself, like armor. It wasn't serious. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. That word again. Big. As if belittling the betrayal could erase it. As if minimizing it would make me forget everything I had just read. You lied to me, I said, voice low, steady. Over and over. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked away, eyes glossy. It just happened. Things got complicated. No, I said firmly. You made them complicated. Silence settled between us, thick and heavy. The life we had built, the plans, the trust, it all unraveled in that moment. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shouting. I was done. I stood, placing the phone gently on the bed. I don't care how big you think this is. To me, it's everything. Sophie reached out, but I stepped back. Some distances shouldn't be crossed. As I walked toward the door, suitcase already packed in my mind, I felt lighter. Not unhurt, but freed. I didn't know what came next. But I knew it wouldn't involve lies. I left without slamming the door. There was no need for theatrics. The silence behind me was louder than any argument we could have had. Sophie didn't chase after me, didn't call out. Perhaps she knew words wouldn't change anything now, not after the trust had been torn apart, thread by thread. Days passed. I stayed at Liam's place, the guest room becoming my temporary refuge. I didn't tell him everything, but he didn't press. Just being around someone who didn't lie, didn't hide, was enough. I focused on the simple things: work, morning jogs, reading books I'd neglected. Each day hurt a little less. Sophie tried calling, once, then twice. I ignored them. Her messages went unread. I wasn't punishing her. I was protecting myself. I needed space, distance, clarity. Then came the email. Subject: I'm sorry. A long apology. No justifications, no excuses, just remorse. She admitted everything. The affair, the deception, the cowardice, and not ending things sooner. She ended the message with, I wish I hadn't taken you for granted. I wish I hadn't made something big out of something I could have fixed with honesty. I stared at the screen for a while. Then I deleted the message. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need it. Closure didn't have to come from her. It came from the choice I made to walk away. Weeks turned into months. Life slowly found its rhythm again. I moved into a small apartment downtown, nothing fancy, but it felt mine. I didn't rush into anything: relationships, decisions, regrets. I gave myself time to heal. One evening, while sipping coffee on my balcony, I looked out at the city lights and realized something. Pain doesn't last forever, but lessons do. I learned not just about betrayal, but about resilience. How sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting for someone else, but standing up for your own worth. I wouldn't let what happened define me. I wouldn't carry the bitterness, the what ifs. Instead, I'd carry the knowledge that I deserved more than secrecy and half-truths. As the night deepened and the world quieted, I felt at peace. Not because everything had worked out the way I wanted, but because I'd survived. I'd rebuilt. And somewhere in that journey, I'd rediscovered myself. The next chapter was unwritten, but this time, I'd be the one holding the pen. I always thought Sophie and I had something rare, a kind of quiet understanding that didn't need grand gestures to prove itself. We met in college, two kids with big dreams and matching sarcasm. Years later, our lives had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Weekday dinners, weekend getaways, late-night conversations about nothing and everything. It wasn't perfect, but it felt solid. That's why I didn't notice the shift at first. It started small, missed texts, distracted glances, conversations that used to flow easily now felt strained. Sophie had always been ambitious, often lost in her work as a marketing executive. Long hours weren't new. But lately it felt like I was competing with her phone for attention, and losing point. One night, we were supposed to celebrate our anniversary. Nothing fancy, just dinner at our favorite spot and maybe a movie afterward. I bought her flowers, cooked dinner, even cleaned the apartment, which she always teased me about neglecting. But 10 minutes before she was supposed to be home, I got the text. "Hey, sorry, can't make it tonight. Work emergency." Rain check? I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. Something about it felt sterile. Sophie always added a heart, or a silly emoji. Not this time. Just words. Cold. Final. I didn't reply. Instead, I ate alone, the untouched flowers sitting beside me like a punchline. I told myself I was overthinking it. Work happens. Emergencies happen. But as I rinsed the dishes, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being edged out of my own life. The following morning, she returned home, exhausted and apologetic. She kissed me on the cheek and promised to make it up to me. I smiled, nodded, told her it was okay. But something inside me had shifted, too. A seed of doubt. A question I didn't want to ask: was work really the emergency? Over the next few days, I tried to dismiss it, tried to focus on the good. But little things piled up: late nights, guarded texts, a strange reluctance to make eye contact when I asked simple questions. Sophie had always been transparent, easy to read. Now, it was like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Then came the moment I couldn't ignore. She was getting ready for another late meeting, hair perfect, perfume lingering. I kissed her goodbye and jokingly said, "Don't have too much fun without me." She laughed, then paused. "I won't. It's not a big deal." I smiled, but inside, that word echoed, big. Why did it sound so loaded? Why did it feel like a warning? I watched her walk out the door, and for the first time in years, I felt like a stranger in my own relationship. Something was wrong. I could feel it, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know the truth. A week passed. The tension didn't fade, it grew. Sophie's phone, once left casually on the table or nightstand, now lived in her purse or pocket. Locked. Always on silent. I wasn't the type to snoop. I respected boundaries. But when those boundaries start feeling like walls, it's hard not to question what they're hiding. She became distant, not just physically but emotionally. Conversations turned transactional. "Did you pick up the dry cleaning?" Replaced. "How was your day?" Her laughter felt forced, her kisses brief. I told myself it was work stress again, that I needed to be supportive. But every time I offered comfort, she seemed further away. The turning point came when I found a receipt tucked between couch cushions. A high-end restaurant, dinner for two, dated the night of our cancelled anniversary. I stared at the slip of paper, heart thudding. That wasn't a client dinner. Sophie hated that restaurant, she once called it. Overrated and pretentious. So why was she there? And with whom? I confronted her that evening, holding the receipt like evidence in a courtroom. She glanced at it, then at me, expression unreadable. It was just Michael, from work. My boss, she said evenly. He wanted to discuss a project in private. Please, Aiden, don't make this a big thing. There it was again, that word. Big. Like I was the problem for noticing. For caring. I wanted to believe her, to let it go. But belief, once cracked, doesn't mend easily. The next few days I found myself watching her more closely. Not in anger, but in confusion. Who was this woman slipping away from me? Was she still the Sophie I loved, or someone entirely different? I shared my doubts with Liam, my closest friend. He listened quietly, then said, Man, I don't want to cause trouble, but something's not right. Trust your gut. His words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. That night, I lay in bed alone again, Sophie still at work, or so she claimed. I stared at the ceiling, the silence heavy. Around midnight, her phone lit up on the dresser, vibrating softly. A message preview blinked into view before fading. Had a great time last night. Can't wait to see you again. I froze. My throat tightened. Michael? Or someone else? The room suddenly felt colder, the air thinner. My instincts screamed, but my heart refused to accept it. Yet there it was, a fragment of truth I could no longer ignore. I needed answers. Real ones,